As of the time that I was there, I was told that they really didn't take them any great distance at all, other than right outside.
Have you heard the rumor of the pilots that were killed by finding
No.
If we had a working agreement with the aliens at one time, why didn't they give us a user's manual for these ships? Why have we had to work so hard back engineering them?
I haven't the slightest idea. You know,
Have they assisted us at all with any of the technology and running it?
I really don't know. You know, it almost seems like there had to have been some assistance or some information found, but who knows?
Your information didn't indicate that.
No.
Yeah, with such tight security around there, supposedly only 500 pounds of this material, how is it somebody can get some of it out of there?
Because some of the, not some of the material is, that they have there is essentially raw. The material is, it has to be machined into discs. These discs have to be stacked up and then cut into a cone shape and then sliced along the long axis of it. That work is done at Los Alamos. I'm not exactly sure Los Alamos knows what they're doing. Apparently they think that they're developing the little coins they're working on is some new type of armor. And having worked at Los Alamos and know people around that area, that's how I obtained some of it.
Can you say anything about Project Looking Glass and the relationship between gravity and time?
Well, gravity and time are almost essentially the same thing. And Looking Glass dealt with using gravity essentially to distort time, and as I've said before, I really know very little about that, but you know, they're only talking about milliseconds or even less microseconds of time distortion. They're not like looking back in time to see who killed Kennedy or something.
The craft that are you talking about, the scout craft, is that the one that's like the Adamski picture with the 3 domes underneath? And if it's not,
I'm not exactly sure what the Adamski
okay,
picture.
it's the saucer shape that has.
This is the one
underneath.
that looks like one of the Meyer craft.
Did you see any others than that one, or is there 9 up there?
Yeah, I saw 9 total, but that's the only one I got close enough to.
Did you see the one with the 3 domes underneath, that 3 balls underneath, that has the central housing underneath?
No.
And then the second question was, did anybody give you any indication as to who was driving or any information on that?
I assume that it was humans that were piloting the craft, though it could have been remote control, but at the one test flight that I saw on the ground, they were in radio communication with someone, and I assumed it was someone in the craft. I imagine it's possible that it could have been a remote observer somewhere, but I just assumed that the seats were retrofitted, or they were sitting on the floor for that matter.
Are you familiar with, I have a couple aspects of the question. Are you familiar with Howard Menger's Electrocraft and Otis Carr's saucer design? And how are their devices, how do they generate their gravity fields and compared with what you've described? And lastly, can you speculate how why the commercialization of some of these crafts hasn't been possible with so many different patents applied for these kinds of design crafts?
Because they don't work.
Are there any G-forces encountered by the pilots inside the craft?
No.
No.
From your interviews, you seem to feel that the Area 51 or the S4 test site was kind of slipshod in how it does its research. It really doesn't have the facilities there to actually do the research correctly. And also, I wondered, could you comment about that? And also, I'm wondering what you could tell us about the other types of ships you saw there that you felt were alien in origin.
Well, as far as the research at S4, that was kind of slipshod. Just because mainly it was being done from a military point of view. If anything, it was a weapons development program, and they were more concerned about with duplicating the technology, not really duplicating the technology, duplicating the hardware, as opposed to back engineering the technology to find out how these theories actually work and what's going on with them. And so they really weren't taking the scientific approach, and that was causing some dissension. I don't remember the second part of the question.
Just what other types of ships did you see that might have been alien in origin?
I only saw them, and they varied in shape, but I was told they had the same identical power and propulsion system, and that's the extent of my knowledge on them.
What about shape?
They varied completely in shape.
Yeah, on that, you had the military out there supposedly working with the aliens. Did you ever get an inference from them that it was a positive or a negative situation? In other words, when they brought up, when they were talking about the aliens or whatever, was it a positive or a negative type slant on the...
Well, they really didn't talk about the aliens. The only time I ever heard anybody mention anything about an alien, someone, and I'm just assuming that, someone called it, or called the thing, a gourd. And that was it. I heard it in the middle of a conversation, and they stopped talking when I got up to them, so that was the thing.
Question from the interior of the sports model. I know you have made reference to the power source in the center of the craft. And there were small seats that were low to the ground. How about consoles or displays or any kind of instrumentation?
Nothing along those lines, but what I call the console, there are 3 seats. If you look at the bottom level, there's the 3 amplifiers in a triad formation. Directly above each one is something I call a console, and I think that's a secondary part to the amplifier. And an analogy to that would be the actual amplifier, and the thing hanging underneath would kind of be a speaker if you're talking on audio terms. So.
Is there any kind of control or light indicator?
No.
No on switch?
Not that I could find.
Did it seem like there was any place or even a need for a light support of any kind on these?
Not that it was obvious to me.
Good question. How do they navigate and how do we converse with them?
I haven't the slightest idea how they navigate. You know, like I said, I think if that, whatever controls the configuration of the amplifier is the focusing, which is basically their navigation, is most probably on the upper level of the craft that I didn't get to look at. And as far as the conversation between them, your guess is as good as mine.
Was the local means of propulsion the same as this across great space differences? What was the local means?
The local means of propulsion is essentially them balancing on an out-of-phase gravity wave. And it's not as stable as you would think. When the craft took off, it wobbled to some degree. It's, I mean, a modern-day Hawker Harrier or something along those lines, a vertical takeoff craft, is much more stable than them in the Omicron configuration, which is that mode of travel. The Delta configuration is where they use the 3 amplifiers, and those are the only 2 methods I know about for moving the craft.
Can one pilot, as far as you know, pilot this craft, or does it take 3, or do you know anything about that?
I don't know. Oh, in the back in the red?
Yeah.
You're both in red.
Number 15, was that stable? In other words, does it give off the radiation, or can you hold it?
No, it's stable.
Stable, so you can hold it right in your hand?
Yeah, theoretically, elements should reach a stability around anywhere from 113 to 116, somewhere in there, and apparently that's true. And again, they should reach a stability somewhere up around 220 some odd. But you know, whether those elements will ever be synthesized or found naturally. Yeah, it's unusually heavy. Yeah.
I want to know what you think of monuments of Mars, and do you think we have bases also?
Do I think we have bases? No. The monuments of Mars are interesting. That's about the most I can say. They're suspicious, and yeah, I really don't know until there's more information. Yeah, I've seen pictures of them and things along those lines, but the most recent Mars probe is taking low-altitude photographs of those, so I guess everyone will know in about a year. Indirectly, yeah.
What about your perception of time and length, width, and height? Is it the same aboard the craft as off of it? while you went aboard compared to when you went off of it?
While you went aboard it, or off of it. Well, as long as you're on the craft, everything seems completely normal to you. Time flows at a normal rate, and if you're off the craft and you're comparing the time of someone in the craft, someone off the craft, there'll be a definite difference there. Anything where gravity's involved, you know, even the shuttle astronauts, they'll come back just because of the difference in gravity. When they come back, they're, you know, there'll be a slight difference in time.
Did you learn of any other well-known civilian scientists who were involved in this?
Yes, not involved in this, but involved in the gravity work. And he's at Los Alamos, and we've had a little bit of contact.
You name names?
I'd rather not, just because so far no one's bothering him, and I'm sure he wants to keep it that way.
You said that the skin on the craft would become transparent. You said the wall inside the craft would become transparent.
Only one place, yeah.
Only one, so the whole craft can become transparent?
No, there's only one place where the seats faced, and it, you know, there again, I said that's advanced technology, but it's not that advanced because, you know, we have something along the lines of that liquid crystal that we could, you know, make transparent and also use as, you know, a display of sorts. So that's, but this was metallic, and we haven't anything along the lines of the toughness of, you know, metal that you could drill into that can become transparent.
What was the time period when the walls became transparent and the salts?
Probably about 30 seconds or so.
Yeah, two related questions. Are you aware of any instances where the inside of an alien craft is much larger than its apparent outside?
No, I've heard stories like that though, but I haven't.
If I can just follow that up.
The strong force, which you've identified with gravity A, I know there's been some recent theories that propose actually an 11-dimensional universe with 7 of them rolled up.
I'm not buying that.
Does it operate on any principle related to that?
Yeah, my main problem with that, and Stephen Hawking for that matter, is that once you start creating other dimensions, it's like an excuse. I mean, in particle physics, they do that too. When they can't figure out something, they say, well, you know, we don't know what gravity is. Well, it's caused by the graviton. Yeah, they make up particles like that. You know, and you can do that with dimensions too. Well, where'd it go? I went into another dimension. Yeah, it's like an excuse. The bottom line is, you know, as everyone has said, every physicist has said, the answer to everything is always simple. And there's not an 11-dimensional universe. It does. First of all, there doesn't need to be, because all this technology works, you know, one-dimensional, essentially a 4-dimensional universe, and you know, there's no need for it.
Yes, a few questions, please. You said in your video tape that you flew to work from Las Vegas to Groom Lake. Is that right?
Yeah.
How did you get from Groom Lake down to Tucson?
In a bus.
There's a facility on the other side of Groom Lake, on the east side of Groom Lake. Are you familiar with that?
On the east side of Groom Lake. Across the lake?
Yes.
No, I've never been over there.
Did everybody, did you get anything of the work that was done on the west side of Groom Lake?
No.
Bob, getting back to his question about if there is any difference between being on the inside of a craft while it's under power versus being on the outside of a craft, of course you wouldn't have experienced that because you were never on the craft when it was powered, right? Under power.
Well, by the fact that the screen became transparent and other things were operational, I can assume that there was some power generated. So.
I see.
So.
Okay. Huh.
Bob, how long were you a part of the S4 project, and how key of a person were you on the science team that studied these vehicles?
I was probably there only 6 months, 4 months, something like that. It's hard to remember. And as far as a key person, I'm sure I was the last rung on the ladder. Though, because no one has really gotten anywhere, you know, they were looking to me for fresh ideas, which I really didn't have anything because I didn't know what, you know, really was going on or where they had been. So it was a very disorganized group, and that's really all I can relay. I don't know how else to describe it.
It was frustrating in that regard.
Very frustrating.
Element 115, does it have emission lines?
Does it have emission lines?
Spectral.
Well, I mentioned it does. Every other element does, yeah.
That you know of?
That, well, no, I haven't seen, you know, any spectrographic analysis on it, or, well, actually, they did do it. I don't know if I saw it, though. I saw a neutron bombardment test and density measurements and things like that, but I'm sure they carried out that test on it, but I wouldn't be able to identify the lines, no.
You're not aware of the results?
You know, they probably showed them to me, but I can't, for the life of me, remember after 4 years.
Is the actual confirmed what you expect to see in the stars?
Possibly in heavier stars or in, you know, planets that you know, surround a larger star system. And in fact, some people brought up that you know, that's ridiculous because, you know, all the elements that we know of are found on Earth, and that's, you know, that's not true. I think it's technium or something along those lines is not found on Earth, and it's on the periodic chart, so it's not that bad.
What?
Hello, Dad.
Doug, and they mapped it out in the south of France. They looked back and looked, and it has to fall where the natural belt of uranium is there. And I was wondering if, you know, you had anything that would lead you from what you saw with that propulsion system to think that aliens may have come here at one time to do that.
I don't know. I mean, no matter what, uranium is certainly a valuable,
right,
you know, element. I don't know.
Did you get to see any aliens at all?
No.
Back to when you were talking about low-level flight, you were talking about a wobble.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever seen the Billy Meyer? Something similar to that?
The Billy Meyer movies.
Of the disc wobbling?
Films.
Film footage. Films of discs.
I don't think I've ever seen any motion.
Yeah, he's got some that fly around a tree, and they've got
some. Oh, wait, I did see that. Yeah, I did see that.
And then there's some other hovering ones where they wobble.
You know what's strange about the Billy Meyer photographs? The discs, that one of the ones he took a picture of, looks exactly like the one that I looked on, but yeah, I'm certainly not an expert in the field, but some of those look unbelievably fake. And I can't, especially the thing with it flying around the tree, I mean, boy, it looks like it's hanging from a string. You know, but why would he do that if he had some authentic pictures and, you know, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that.
How do you feel about, or do you have an opinion of this conflict that allegedly happened between Grays and the Delta Force in, what was it, 89 or whatever? Do you hear anything about that?
I really don't really have an opinion. I just, you know, repeat it.
You think it really took place?
Boy, I don't know.
Any weapons on these ships?
Yeah, apparently there's one, but I was involved in the project that dealt with it.
And what's your next video going to cover?
Well, it's really not a next video. There's the video that I made is being redone by another company only because they liked it so much, and they're just redoing the graphics and making it a little more technical, and you know, I'm just serving as a technical advisor on it. But for the most part, it's 60 to 70% of it's, you know, the identical thing. They just wanted to do it because these particular group of guys involved, I think the company's called DreamQuest, involved in special effects, were really into the UFO thing, and they wanted to do it with modern day stuff instead of, you know, knit stockings and things like that. Well, it's certainly possible. You know, I don't have any information on that, but just by the EMP generated, you know, by the systems on the craft, that makes perfect sense to me.
I was going to ask you, what type of weapon do they have?
It's some sort of directed energy weapon, and I think it's a...
like a laser beam?
Well, no, a particle weapon, probably a neutron.
How many levels does that S4 have, do you know? Just one, or just below ground? Or?
There might be two, but I know there's one, because obviously I was on one, but I can't actually remember if there's any direct mention from there of there being a lower level. But you know, I really wasn't allowed to roam freely around the whole place, so I don't know. You know, I really don't know.
Bob, could you tell us about your education? Not just a couple of different conflicting things I'd like to hear from you.
That varies widely. As far as electronic technology, my degree there is from Caltech, and physics is from MIT.
When did you graduate? Did you go to Pierce College?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, that's just another question.
Where did you hear that?
A friend said something that, you know, somebody I don't even know. I just thought, well, it's something I want to ask because it cleared it in my mind.
Yeah, I went to Pierce and Northridge, and then I'm terrible at dates. I don't remember what date I was at Pierce. Probably like in '76 or something. I was at Pierce, and then '77 or '8. I went to Northridge just for a short time for some classes, and I was at Caltech, and then MIT after that.
Yeah, some critics have suggested that there is not a Department of Naval Intelligence as shown on your IRS record. I wonder if you could address that.
Yeah, I've heard people say that before, but the bottom line is if you, and I've let other people check into that. Bob Exler is a guy that managed to trace that down through the IRS, and if you write the zip code number on the bottom of it, or NC-101 or something like that, or NC something, anyway, it gets to somewhere in the Navy. You know, as far as if there's a department of there, you know, I don't know, but you know, that's the W-2 that I got sent. So.
Well, that same person was saying though that the zip code that was on there was someone that was in reserve, unused in Washington. Some zip code
That was unused.
Yeah.
Well, no, he had correspondence with someone in the Navy through that address.
I'm not talking about Bob Exler. I'm talking about Bill Moore.
Oh, Bill Moore.
Yeah.
I don't know. Bill Moore.
I know he's an enigma himself.
Yeah,
I'm just saying that was his point.
I guess he disputes everything I say. He said, "Well, there's two different types on here, and this and that." I said, "Well, you know, I don't know." So, you know, that's basically what I get sent, and you know, I've seen enough information to where that zip code works, and that's all the information I have. I really haven't pursued it myself.
But maybe clarify for them why you think this is a legitimate document because of the certain elements in there that are correct.
Oh, because of the amount of money.
Right.
Yeah, no one would know the amount of money
Yeah.
except me and,
And
the
that was
people
correct.
that, you know, so that's all the information I've got on it.